Fountain Square. Chapter 4. The sand scorpion hand moves with an unexpected acceleration off the spot and quickly reaches a traveling speed. But more surprisingly, it does this in near silence. Some time passes and the end still is not in sight. The boy was able to catch a breath as the giant sand scorpion hand did the walking. From up there, he can see the scene ahead changing, but it still is a great distance away before he can tell what the change is. As time goes on and he does come closer, he is able to make out that the corridor is gradually funneling out, broadening further. He thinks he sees something at the far end. Looks like my stop. His stomach pulls in a little, and some of the tension from before has resurfaced. He is careful not to miss a thing. The sand scorpion hand slows down as they, the scorpion hand and him, get closer. It is an archway, a doorless stone archway. It is typically installed to connect to other corridors or from space to space, allowing one to walk through uninterrupted. Yun moves off the ceiling and down the wall to get a clearer view. Effortless is the silence that the giant sand scorpion brings with its movements, and in no time are they both on the ground. Yun's feet touch the floor. The scorpion shrinks back down to size, and together with the tail retreat into the sand arm. It is just Yun and the sand arm now. Seems to be a room. Something is in the middle, he remarks as he sees the first glimpses. It is a dimly lit room. It appears to be in the shape of a square. Yun ballparks it to be around 3 double-decker buses wide and 2 double-deckers tall. What draws his attention to a near magnetic level is what he finds in the middle of the room. He sees a figure, the outline of a delicate and unusually tall woman. As he comes closer, he sees that it is a statue. Despite that it is placed in a sunken position 3 steps down, with each step forming a square around the statue, it towers up and has the effect to be growing out of the ground as one comes closer. The woman is made entirely out of white marble stone. She's taller than a bungalow's roof. What's on her looks ancient. What garments were these? But that is not what absorbs his main focus in near totality. She has 3 other faces scaling diagonally up in a bizarre but still beautifully molten form. Her eyes, eyebrows, noses, and jawlines appear natural and exceptionally captivating, despite her overpronounced biological deviations from a healthy human form. Her 2 arms appear as if they were halted mid-dance. All his senses, including the new ones the sand arm provides, tell him that there is nothing but an openly wicked and hateful aura emanating so contrastingly clear from the statue that it feels as if it is making a mockery out of Yun's undivided attention towards her. He is nearly misstepping the obvious, that this is a trap, and any further steps could activate it. Yun literally feels as if he subconsciously stopped at the invisible line of a trigger. After he just freshly gotten away from a life or death situation, Yun would rather not jump into another trap just yet. He takes a few steps back and looks around in a way that does not let the statue out of his sight. An escape. He is looking for a way of escape. Another door, a ventilation shaft, a crack in the wall, or just turning back the way he came from. But something tells him it would not be a trap if going back was an option. Could I merge with the wall and sneak past the statue? The sand arm almost immediately lets him know that this is a bad idea. The statue, in conjunction with the room, seems to be highly sensitive to stealthy maneuvers. This is a head-on situation, a true trap he just walked into, a trap that mocks him, allowing him to realize that he is in a trap, to demoralize him, to bring on the sense that this is unavoidable, a big mistake, the oncoming feeling of dread. Yun moves from side to side and only now notices the detail of a space behind the statue, another corridor, although it appears to be nowhere near as large as the one he spider walked through. To the left and right of the statue, he sees exits. The left seems to have steps that go down, while the one on the right goes up. I didn't see all this, huh? It's a trap, all right. At closer inspection, the walls and floor are covered in the same material, a red, gold, and light brown mixed marble stone. The ceiling is made from some type of mosaic, white and blue stone tiles. Yun contemplates his options, a luxury only afforded to those who do not unknowingly trigger traps, or who, to the amusement of the present trap setter, are allowed time to consider the one and last move. The room is not large. If something happens, I need to be able to handle speed, to either get away quickly or quickly attack, and I would like to end it in one precise blow. His thoughts run fast as he emerges from his state of worry into a tactical thought process. His eyes lock with the eyes of one of the three faces she wears. Yes, he does not need the sand arm to see it. She is indeed not hiding it. Her aura is one of mocking and a thirst for the red, dense liquid of life. The sand arm absorbs his concerns, and Yun senses something in it, a mental construction of an idea. Strings of sand blast out of the arm and form a carousel around him before attaching themselves onto his legs, chest, and back, and flow down his shoulders, where they merge again with the sand arm, which in the meantime has grown and shaped itself into a long lance. Numerous new things, connections, and processes are happening in Yun's mind as the assembling nears its completion. Yun is taken off the ground and is smoothly being elevated up. The boy looks down and sees sand-shaped legs that are extended and curved, similar to that of a kangaroo's. Yun looks on with astonishment. Wonders keep coming, he thinks awestruck, as his new sand legs continue to define themselves toward the finished product. The 12-year-old moves his eyes back to his right arm, which by now has developed an odd separation 2/3 up this roughly 8 skateboards long sand lance. Between the split, he sees a glowing orb. Its light highlights the wavy edges where it perfectly cracked like a 2-piece eggshell. Vanguard, jump, are the words that appear in Yun's mind. The transformation is complete, and his senses pick up various new gauges of measure. His relationship to the ground changed. the way he perceives the air pressure has changed. The statue before him now has strings of a color he is not familiar with going through and out of it. His muscles tense up. Yun's sensitivity to the details in his surroundings just spiked to a whole new plateau of bubbles full of information. The boy feels as if he could hear a mouse crawl on the other side of a wall, if there was one indeed hushing about. His eyes move again to this glowing orb in his sand-arm lance. He senses an immense power built up within it. The sand-arm intuitively sends him a message that appears in his mind's eye as pictures, not unlike a hologram that is visible only to him. The information presented makes immediate sense to Yun. Several other pieces of data that correspond are quickly downloaded into him at unimaginable speeds, and thus a familiarity with this mode that should not be enters him. Yun looks up at the statue with a determined smile. Like before, she stands there tall and graceful with her three faces, of which one, like before, is still looking his way. His knees bend, and he feels her sand legs pump with thrilling energy. The smile across his face widens even further as a newfound capable confidence spreads in him. The boy smoothly leans forward. He has a plan. Yun blasts off the ground and immediately reaches the left corner wall to the right of the statue, from where he immediately again sets off on a second jump with barely a split second spent on there. He jets straight across the room, aiming for the steps that lead up. Several explosions rage in the air. The pressure waves change Yun's trajectory, and he slams against the wall with his right shoulder. He is a few meters off his target and tumbles down, nearly landing on his head, but he manages not to. The ground in both corridors, the one he came from and the one straight ahead after the statue, fall away down into black, endless-seeming chasms. Yun witnesses how a sea of fire that seems to emit from the ceiling's center claims all corridor exits and engulfs both staircases. Yun's eyes are mesmerized by the forceful waves of liquid flames that consistently flow down the exits. They are so bright yellow and hot that Yun needs to blink a few times for the lack of moisture in the air, drying his eyes and making his vision blurry. He feels heat approaching and instinctively moves away from the wall as flames run down it, hot and spitting. Droplets of fire land close to Yun and keep on burning. Remarkably, the red, gold, and light brown mixed marblestone ground mostly remains flame-free. Yun grits his teeth and turns around while his sand lance drags on the floor. He's trying to get on his feet but struggles with his balance. His ears are ringing in several frequencies. In front of a hurt Yun is a room which ceiling, walls, and exits are covered in fire. His senses blow the sirens wildly. They all tell him at the same time to get up. This was the trap, and the combo is coming. Death. Death looms over him, and with a scream, Yun blasts off. Something passes by him at an immeasurable speed, tanking into the ground. A blast wave at the location he just left sends his trajectory flying off course once again. And there also is a crash near in front of him. Yun lands somewhere on the ground, short before one of the flaming walls. The sand prompts a sharp warning, leading him to look up. Yun looks up and freezes. The square ceiling is filled with blue water. And the further up it goes, the darker the water becomes. An ocean that is somehow trapped in a ceiling. And again, as in the cathedral-like space and the giant eye, the body of water is held back and does not rush down and flood the room. In there, a face stares back at Yun. It seems like it had two other faces, but they look like broken up porcelain. The stone-like creature is massive, and its length disappears into the dark, watery depths behind it. The boy sees two arms, wavy wet hair, and instinctively looks down and turns his head towards a statue in the room and puts two and two together. The statue's two faces are broken. This matches the creature in the ceiling. Was it my sand lance? That means they are connected, and this must be its real form, says Yun, thinking out loud. His eyes stray further to where he jumped from, and they freeze to a stop right there. A sinking feeling in his guts makes him feel not so good. Yun sees a large hole. Where he just was is a large square hole on the ground, filled with water. His life could have ended right there, spread out in a red pond. The sand arm prompts Yun that contact with water will slow him down and make him vulnerable. Yun remembers this as a fact when he got splashed with water while the sand arm had him moving through a wall back at the cathedral-like space and the lion-like creatures. When he got splashed, it did slow him down. No. If I slow down here, I'm done. No. The sand arm prompts him of another incoming attack, but Yun has already blitzed from his position. Two ear-shattering crashes sound simultaneously. Yun stands in the middle of the room. Behind him is a giant square hole in the wall where he just stood close to. On his sand lance is the smashed remains of the last face of the statue. Yun looks up. An ordinary ceiling. He looks around. All the fires, the red and yellow flames, and their bright, intense heat have extinguished. The exits and staircases are clear, and the corridor floors are back to normal, as if nothing happened. The dark abyssal spaces from earlier are no longer. The trap has been neutralized. The threat to his life has gone way ponder. Not today, says Yun, falling to his human knees as the sand lance and the rest retreat into the arm. Yun has managed to overcome the trap. A deadly play, a grip on his eyes as focus, the lure, the silent mocking, the confidence the statue had in its ability to have him, that it made the mistake to give Yun the time to think. A terrible trap made for a poor, unbecoming fool to walk into, mesmerized, to then not exist at all anymore as standing, but interspersed across the floor as bits of meat and splashes of red painted onto the floor and walls in wild patterns amid a crimson pond. If it was not for the sand arm alerting Yun before triggering the trap, there was not anything special about Yun himself in this sense that would have otherwise tipped him off. He would have just walked on and become a crimson pond. The fearful lessons of this experience are deeply imprinted onto Yun's memory and DNA. Perception leads to detection, says Yun dry. The sand arm has proven incredibly useful with sensing dangers and imminent spouts of death. Yun wonders if he could explore and develop sensory skills. The sand arm silently advises him that indeed such skills are available in the future when Yun achieves higher levels, energy, and experience. In the meantime, the boy has to act smart and direct to the promptings of the Sandam, as he already proven he can. Every split second in such a situation will be the decision between loft and yard, and the graveyard 6 feet under. Yun catches his bearings and observes the corridor he came from. Peculiarly, it remains dead quiet. The commotion here did not encourage the giant lion-like creatures to try harder against the tall double door that still seems to be holding them back. The Sandarm is letting him know that it now senses small amounts of water from the corridor he came from, suggesting the tall double door's strength in holding the enormous amount of weight and force back is fading. Yun's stomach churns. The boy is not interested at all in hanging around and finding out if the door will continue to hold. He turns to see one of the holes in the wall the life statue in the ceiling created. The Sandarm senses his fatigue and the direction he wants to go. It releases sand on Yun's feet, which rolls him across the room and up and through the square hole in the wall. He lands adeptly on the other side and looks around to discover a cramped pathway. Yun consults with it. "Can the wall be repaired?" he asks, drained. The Sandarm replies in its intuitively quiet way that at Yun's current level, you can only use the same type of building materials as the wall, and the materials have to be close by. Then, the Sandarm can indeed fill in the gap and make it look and feel as strong as before. Yun finds this way of silent communication fascinating. It is like knowing how to prepare and make pancakes and rehearsing the steps in the mind and realistically remembering the taste. He sees pictures, sometimes stills, sometimes in action, and the necessary details are translated to him as if he was the one who did it, as if he was the one from whom those memories came from, like how he blitzed across the room with a sand lance, as if he has done it 10,000 times before. Yun was in fact remembering abilities he has never used. "So strange. This is just wicked," he thinks, excited. The Sandarm continues. At a higher level, Yun could replicate the building materials closest to stone from scratch, and even replicate the look of a wall, glass, and even metal. Yun feels excitement, but calms back down and concentrates while he applies focus onto the broken parts from the wall and the bits on the ground. Several strings of sand sprout from the Sandarm onto the floor to pick up every single debris. The ground has sand rolling all over it. Then, in one smooth motion, the sand lifts and tilts towards the wall. As the broken up pieces of stone are being repaired, they are made whole just before reaching the wall and reattach in their missing positions. Yun's eyes widen up as it is indescribable to describe the moment just past. The near, silent smoothness, how rhythmic the waves of the sand gracefully were interacting with the stone bricks and blocks, how they swiftly reassembled back into position, which is quite strange to be excited by, given what he has experienced thus far. But in the essence, what makes this moment so special to him is, for once, Yun is not in immediate danger and gets to experience, really see what is happening and take it all in. The wall is restored. A sudden, thunderous sound makes Yun's feet and chest vibrate. It comes from behind the wall, closely followed by a ground-shaking, furious roar. "Yeah, right choice," thinks Yun, alarmed. Again, Yun is not sticking around to find out for sure. but it is not hard to guess that the lion-like creatures have burst past the tall double door and are now in the same room he just exited, looking for him. And with just a few leaps, Yun leaves that section behind and keeps running down the narrow pathway as fast as his human legs can take him. "It's too dark! Jesus Buddha!" The Sandom sends a surprising response. He senses sand strings flowing up his arm, climbing on top of his shoulder. He feels a light weight and... "Let there be light!" He laughs. From his right shoulder gleams a bluish, silverish light, which Yun notices acts very strangely to any light sources he has ever seen. He is staring at an eye. The eye white, the sclera, is black. The second part, where an eye often has color, the iris, is blue. The pupil, normally the black center, glows silver. And from the stem to the sand enclosing the eye, acting as skin and eyelids, upper and lower lid, that sand itself also glows silver. But these facts alone are not what he finds strange. Unlike any light he has ever seen, the eye is not showing a visible stream of light. Instead, it is more as if it convinced the ground, walls and ceiling to glow, in quite brightly, but not disturbingly so, just right. Yun simply stops and makes a full rotation, 360 degrees, and confirms that this effect is actually everywhere around him. Maybe because it is not light, but something this Sandom does to my eyes that allows me to see like that. Not bad, as far as hypotheses go. This will be useful if it indeed works like that. I have to test this out. If I can confirm it, it becomes a theory, the next stage of a hypothesis, thinks Yun scientifically. He continues his run forwards. After some time, ahead sees Yun a spiral staircase. The narrow path ends there. The boy takes a few seconds to think as he looks at the walled spiral staircase. If I encounter anything going up those stairs, I'm burnt toast. There would be nowhere else for me to go, even if I was in that vanguard jump. I need to avoid that. The sand arm responds, and sand strings release from it and float down his leg and to his feet. The sand eye remains in place as Yun begins to sink into the ground. Oh yeah, that worked back then in that cathedral space. That's the stealth option. And in mere seconds finds Yun himself beneath the ground and fully merged with stone. He is back in that one-man-sized sand bunker, a 360-degree narrow view through one uninterrupted flowing window that stretches all around him, and a round window above Yun that shows the view up. Probably should call this Stage 1 stealth mode, and the other one that connects everything directly to my eyes, Stage 2. And I don't know how this works now, but that silver eye thing still lets me see in the dark outside the windows. So it doesn't have to directly shine on a surface, so maybe it is doing it through my eyes. The staircase is narrow, but could allow 2 grown men to walk up side by side. From the ground, he moves towards the wall of the spiral staircase and keeps going until he is midway up the wall. Okay, that should do it. Now for a way to get out of this place. Man, I'm tired. The Sandam senses Yun's furthering exhaustion and warns that this is not the right time for rest. It is best to keep on moving before whatever new or old thing that is behind the repaired wall notices that Yun is in none of the corridors. To Yun's dismay, this makes sense. How long until these things behind that wall looked through all the exits from that room and decided to investigate why the statue smashed the repaired wall. The sandam fixed it, but not all the evidence from that fight are gone. Debris from the fight are all over, and that might lead to that wall. Sooner or later, they might understand what actually happened and blast through that repaired wall. And from then, it's just a narrow corridor that goes left and right. One of those paths will lead to me. With feelings of apprehension and exhaustion, Yun moves on in stealth mode. The priority is to find a safe place to hide and rest. Then after, a way out of this realm. From the wall, he shifts himself over to the ceiling and follows the staircase up. Minutes have passed since the boy began moving up the spiral staircase. Images of Angelina and Dex find them. All we did was explore some old place, and maybe we could turn it into our hideout. Everything was fine when we opened the metal door and found the dark staircase. Angelina was pumped to go explore and find things. We go down this damn staircase, level after level, and find a landing on each floor that didn't go anywhere. So we kept on going down the stairwell and found more of just that. Angie lost it and ran down, I guess to make this faster. But each level was the same, a landing that went nowhere. She kept going and we followed her, and I stopped counting the floors a while ago. We finally noticed that this stairwell just went on ridiculously deep. It didn't make sense. Why? So we decided we're going back up and home. Bring more tools, as this looked like it's gonna be a long thing. She's the first to sprint up, so we follow her again. And out of all the luck, she hurts herself going up the stairwell, not down, which is lucky, I guess. So after a rest, we take her by the shoulders and slowly go up. It took forever. It was so easy sprinting down, but it took like 30 times more to go back up and out of the stairwell. So we're finally out of that metal door, and immediately things feel strange. The corridor looks different. It is wide, way too wide. It's like we went through the entrance of a major modern airport. And the corridor is straight, but we came in through a narrow corner. And then all the madness happened. I mean, why? Tentacles made from a black something grow out from the walls and become spikes and whips and create holes in the ground, shattering concrete? Why? How? Then Dex and me had this ridiculous fight. I mean, we fought before, but this was like, I want to do brain damage serious. Why? Why were we so angry at each other? I can't explain where that came from. Then we got separated, and I go through all this craziness with waking up in the middle of a desert, eating all that food, getting swung into a room with pedestals, this damn owl, an owl, and then this tombstone that burnt me, and now I'm here? Where Angie and Dex? How do I get out? The memories flood him and replay in his mind over and over to a maddening rhythm. Yun's chest feels tight. His breathing gets faster. The boy does not feel in control of his own breaths and heartbeats. They are doing their own thing, independent from his will. Yun is suffering a panic attack, for this is too real and there still is no way out in sight. Yun's stealth mode deactivates and he emerges out of the wall and falls, heading headfirst towards the stone steps. The sand dam springs to action and releases a thick bed of sand on Yun while it tilts him around to avoid him landing on his head. The boy lands safely, but is shaking. His breaths sound like an old gas car trying and failing to start. Tears flow down his face. They will not stop coming. They keep running down his reddened cheeks. Whatever happens now, his subconscious decided this was the time to reflect, to have this moment. He's just 12 after all. How will I get out of here? Which direction is the right one out? When? What was this darkness in the corridor that got us separated? Why can't this sand hump communicate with me? Why me? Why us? I want to go home. Thoughts pour and scream into Yun's mind. Doubts and fears rise to his throat, and the feeling of anxious discombobulation wave his notion of hope away. He is tired, and the part of him that represents worry and doubt have pointed their ears up, sensing that the control over the iron door of his mind that kept them, the emotions on the lock, has been abandoned and left them with the opportunity to come out and cause havoc. The door in his mind that shuts away his fears, the irrational, is now open. Does he not have every right to lose it now? A way out, please, a way out. The sand arm remains silent to his wish. The boy is undergoing a panic attack. Wave after wave of cold, sweaty doubts and hopelessness flood him, rush him, a trapped feeling, and it will not go away. Breathe, man. Yun tries, the boy tries to hold his heart steady. That machine of flesh and blood, the core of life itself, has its own mind now, and he keeps pumping fast, far too fast. His heart feels like a raging wild horse that got spooked and has been running for miles non-stop. His heart rate shoots up faster and pumps even harder, ignoring Yun's waning, pleading attempts at control. Yun is seeing an onset of fog in his vision, and it looks like someone is switching the lights off from all around him, gradually dimming them towards Yun. Please, focus. If I faint now, this is it. Please, focus, he says to himself out loud. He goes for one last attempt to regain control as he lays there, breathing heavy on the sand-covered steps. He is otherwise completely still. Yun is too exhausted from his past ordeals to move. The boy is holding on, closing his eyes to find focus, forgetting the cold feeling liquid pumping through his veins, forgetting about the future, forgetting about what had passed. He is holding on to the now. Regrets must stay behind, and only the truth shall percolate. Not everything that was is true. Not everything projected into the future will be. The anxieties and worries about the future must dim and make dark the many paths, too stimulating. Off must the lights go. Quiet for the ears to rest. Silence from the voices in his head that use his sound to speak his fears to him. Augmented truths. Yun's eyes are shut. Darkness is what he sees. Silence is what he hears. After a while, bubbles begin to appear. As they come closer, he sees moving images in them, like a TV placed on mute. They are his subconscious thoughts, passing thoughts of many kind. Some are recent, others mundane, some old, others attention-grabbing. Some are deep in the stories they tell. Others are seemingly boring, but hide a hidden message that require close attention. There are stories in each bubble, and the first he sees coming are 5, then 15. Many bubbles converge towards the center of the dark and quiet space in Yun's mind. Silently, they flow towards the center. This Yun is familiar with. He is in the middle of meditating. Okay, I know how to do this. The center is focus, and the bubbles come from every direction. They are my thoughts, all of them. Some are logical, some are emotional. My job is to maintain focus on the center while I swat away the bubbles coming at it, without viewing what's inside them. Each time I do view what's inside the bubble, my focus and concentration battery gets zapped, and I do worse in focusing. The initial 5 bubbles coming towards the center, he swats away successfully. His focus increases and he feels quite a rushing wave of energy reaching him, recharging his battery and bettering his focus. Many more bubbles appear and he swats away, but one catches his eye. Throwing reason to the wind, he unashamedly dives in. Summer, forests, Rosalind. Warm sunlight greets him. Yun recognizes where he is. He finds himself in summer camp. Her eyes are radiant green, and she is looking at him expectantly with a light smile. Despite Yun being a year older and choosing the spot at the hill over the grassy valley that just keeps stretching on, he just cannot help himself but think that she looks like she has done this before, many more times than himself. He audibly chuckles. She chuckles with him. Well, we know what to do here. Let's give her what she wants, he thinks, trying to gather his moxie. He turns to her and uses his thumb and index finger to hold her chin and gently begins to draw her in. She immediately follows his direction and comes closer to him. Their lips touch. They close their eyes. Yun remembers to focus. Out he comes from that memory, and he's back in the darkness. The focus's center and the bubbles flow around disorganized. The experience sapped away a portion of his focus battery and made him prone to fall for another bubble's lure. The boy gathers himself. It was a warm experience, but he must not allow himself to fall for another memory or feeling. He needs to focus. Focus, man, he thinks, smiling. Yun centers himself and heavily concentrates and applies that focus. The memory bubbles come. He swats them away. More come rushing towards the center. He swats them away again. Each successful swat increases his streak and makes him less susceptible to the bubbles' lure. Minutes pass, and Yun keeps swatting until no more bubbles come at him. It is dark and calm and stays that way for a while. Yun allows himself to feel this peace. Pulsating. He feels a pulse from the center. The area glows red and dense, then explodes. Energy flows through his veins. His skin, his mind, his muscles flex many times again and feel charged. His eyes open wide. Yun is standing on the steps of the spiral staircase. He did not even notice that he has stood up. The boy jumps at the staircase wall. The sand arm stretches ahead of him, and he just disappears into the stone wall, cleanly, like a professional swimmer diving into water. Ja, Herr Kommandant, all engines and gears are rolling, he says out loud with a smile. Yun moves from the wall to the ceiling, continuing his way up the spiral staircase in stealth mode. The sand arm shares some critical details. Focus is the key for Yun to maintain any of the modes. Some require very little, others much more, with very tiny margins for slip-ups. Focus is the first critical factor used to maintain control over any of the modes. Next is concentration. Concentration flows to the space of focus, like gas being fed into a gas cylinder. Focus is the cylinder, concentration is the gas, and that creates pressure. Both are required to control the gas going in and out. Release it too fast, and something inside breaks, and it all comes out at once. Too slow, and the mode will not happen. The gas did not reach the required pressure to make things move. For the enemy, this is an important attack vector that Yun must keep hidden. Every great ability has a serious flaw or drawback, and this is Yun's secret to keep. So this means, if the enemy somehow manages to disrupt my focus, I'm done. The Sandam responds in its silent and intuitive way that there are many ways known and unknown to achieve this disruption. Yes, like a professional juggler, there's rhythm, time between each object that passes by their hands. Even if a couple objects fall to the ground, as long as a rhythm is kept and the juggler is skillful enough, the objects can be added back without disrupting the whole rhythm, the balance. This is the safety line. When in meditation, the act of focusing and the gathering of concentration, the muscle memory in a way keeps things going even when Yun is not actively in focus, coming back in time for everything not to crumble. That is the safety line, the rope he has to balance on. And one way Yun has just discovered that will allow his focus to get disrupted are very intense emotional memories and thoughts, leading one away from mental clarity, like the panic attack he had. Yun did not immediately fall out of the wall. There was time before the rhythm broke, and Yun went past it. So that's what happened. The sand adds, any liquids mixing with the sand alters how it behaves. It is not necessarily a negative. The sand will simply act differently. This can be used as a positive or used against Yun as a negative. Right, the last two encounters used water. The Sandam confirms Yun's observation and tells him that the trap in the cathedral-like space was initially avoided by using the sand umbrella to both evade the giant eye and the sand circle to hold back the rising levels of water. This protective system was triggered when the sand umbrella sensed danger by liquid and the presence above, while Yun was unconscious. The calm meditation and focus Yun produced while he was in the hand of the tombstone having his throat squeezed was enough left over for the Sandam to use and act in his defense. Meditate and maintain focus, got it. And senses are literally a lifesaver. Then come perception, speed and power, in that order, concludes Yun. The Sandam confirms his thoughts and adds that indeed, power and speed mean nothing if the senses are not of the right type to alert one in time of an attack, leading to one's own quick defeat. After senses, perception is next. While a lot of things are happening in battle, they may serve as a slight distraction for the real hit to land. Perception works by keeping track of the various things moving, while significant differences are carefully measured and followed in the mayhem. Then speed and power are self-explanatory. And how to go about leveling any of these? The Sandam lets you know that other than through experience, what future abilities will actually look like depends on the character of the wielder. Yun's foundation character is anchored on focus and concentration, while another's character would be rage and hands-on violence. Yet another's character might be patience and intelligence, and he might devise imaginative traps and counter-traps. yet another's might have the character of a beast and puppetry master, designing creatures to directly control and use in battle, while the wielder stays hidden from the fight itself. The sand arm grants various possibilities, but they are anchored and therefore locked to a wielder's character. How do I specifically increase concentration and focus? Do I just do what I did? Meditate? Asks Yun. Concentration and focus through meditation leads to a flow state, which is any activity or process that allows one to enter a flow state. To focus on one thing and becoming so efficient in it that it feels like second nature and effortless. Flow state to the mind is like the most purified fuel used in a Formula 1 car, the best driver with the best machine and the best fuel, the best tires, the best everything. Because of muscle memory, both in the mind's sphere and the visible body, flow state can be entered in a matter of seconds, like coming back to a paused song. For abilities, focus is used to direct where the energy is to flow, to reveal and lock in new possibilities while the right intensity and frequency is held. The sand arm prompts Yun if this is something he would like to do now. Yun, inside his stage 1 stealth mode, views the 2 windows and looks to his left and right. He has climbed up the spiral staircase pretty far, and it seems like a good time to train this. The beasts have not yet broken through that repaired wall and come after him. Yun confirms he wants to do it. The sand arm sends vivid visuals into Yun's mind, and he is transduced into a new virtual reality, virtual mode. He is not quite sure what happened, but before he knows it, he is standing in a large hall of white sandstone walls, marble floor tiles, and white clouds instead of a ceiling. The sand arm prompts him to meditate and get into flow state. Yun closes his eyes and sees darkness. He imagines a ring of energy and applies focus, aiming to strengthen the ring's wall. To his surprise, no bubbles appear. His mind is already cleared, so he leans into concentration, and energy flows from the outside ring in. The right type of energy and the right frequency only are allowed through. Yun feels a dense and heavy force filling the focus ring. Something in him clicks audibly. He stretches his right arm out, and strings of sand spiral out of it, heading to the palm of his hand, where they merge into the shape of a slowly rotating sphere. The sand sphere remarkably stays the same size, while the sand just seemingly disappears into it. As the flow of sand continues its way into his palm, something in the space of 40 minutes have passed by since Yun has entered dense concentration. He controls the speed of the strings, the angle they approach the sand sphere, and how thick they are individually. He has found the rhythm, and things nearly flow on their own, close to effortless. Now, Yun decides to change the system of flow by mentally disabling the sphere from absorbing the sand strings. The resulting reaction makes the sphere grow instantly. Yun adjusts the speed of the strings, heading towards the sphere, thereby controlling its growth. He concentrates and allows it to float and rotate in his palm. The boy focuses in separating one thin layer of the sphere and makes it grow gently. His attempt is successful. It gradually increases in size. Yun notices that the individual grains of sand in the new second sphere begin to sparse out, weakening their connection. To correct this, he searches for the point in its expansion when it was at its most stable. He finds it and applies the rate of change for the sand arm to memorize. As the practice goes on and the outer sphere successfully gets bigger, The first sphere elevates higher into the air to make space. The sand arm prompts. This can help him increase perception during battle. If an enemy enters into the sphere in situations of low visibility, such as smoke, mist, or in pitch darkness, this ability will not only inform him if something is coming in, it will also let him know if there is a gap or hole on the ground he cannot see and could fall into. As Yun already has experienced, this ability is most programmable. Once deployed, it will do its work passively as long as he does not come out of his concentration and focus past the safety line. "How fast can the spheres notify me?" asks Yun. The Sandam replies that it depends on how fast the spheres spin, how many of those sand strings are connected through the spheres, and of course the number of spheres. "Okay, I'll create a few more and expand them evenly to cover a space that fits a double-decker bus," says Yun, calculating. The many spheres grow out and find their place. The strings of sand are woven through them, and soon it looks like as if Yun is covered by mist or spherical sand. The sand arm confirms the programming is now complete. Yun needs to simply summon them by focusing, and his spheres will be in place. Yun spends some more time in this virtual mode programming. Details and improved customizations on Vanguard Jump, and on a variation of the sand spheres that only sends out strings several meters ahead evenly on the ground in every direction to increase his sensory perception like mycelium root on a petri dish, substantially useful in perceiving an area a distance away from Yun. Another useful variation he programs in are when the sand lines detect something, then spores of sand light enough to float in the air will expand and explore a room or area, reporting back data. Yun spends days in virtual mode as the sand arm reassured them that time worked differently here. Yun finally emerges with his head partially out of stealth mode, hanging from the ceiling of the spiral staircase. "How long has it been out here?" The Sandam replies silently that something of about 40 minutes have passed. "What? That's insane. I was in there for about 4 days, says Yun, just shocked. The Sandam reminds him that time is relative and is experienced by things, beings, and spaces, and they all remember time and experience it in their time. The direct emphasis here being on the word experience. When Yun entered his flow state, he left things behind to come closer to where the Sandam actually resides. Like two overlapping circles, they have a shared space where time is experienced differently. Through their entering into this place, the space exists. The space, Yun, and the Sandam all do not originate from the same place, nor frequency, nor realm. All three of them in this place feed time to experience. The space newly born is and has become the third witness to time. Time moves in impossible ways, made possible by these three witnesses, not from the same place. Yun pretends to profoundly understand it all and moves on. Otherwise, the boy's ability to take in information while in this state is translated exceptionally fast. Words are cast away, and the connection is even closer than the thoughts in one's own mind. Words are a bridge used to make other beings understand meaning, but meaning is not inherently words. There is something simpler and much denser and far truer than words, and the realm Yun found himself in earlier is where time and information do flow in impossible ways, made possible in that space. The workload made it appear as 4 days, but in there was no sun, there was no moon, there was no hunger, there was no thirst, there was no need to relieve himself, there was no need to sleep. "Pure madness," says Yun, pumped. Yun moves up the stairs in stealth mode, and several minutes later, the spiral staircase finally meets its end and opens up to a wide, walkable landing. In front of him is a tall, open archway, revealing an immense space with an even taller ceiling. It is almost cave-like. The broken-up architecture of a long, bygone era strewn across the vast space. There are smashed stone columns that once stood tall and proud, carvings of people on the walls that have all but crumbled away. Numerous bits of stone and rock take over nearly every walking space, some the size of cars, others small enough to cause roll and fall hazards. Strangely, some of the rocks seem to glow bright and together build up enough luminance to well nigh illuminate the entire place. The sand eye on Yun's shoulder retreats back into the sand arm. Strangely, the lights from the stones did not blind them while the sand eye was active. The sand arm prompts that something wielding large power is here. Far ahead, more 3 large metal lances spinning on the back of a creature of metal and stone, the height of a 12-story villa. The ceiling is many times further up, making the stone giant appear small despite its height. The creature is focused on a bright cube. It is hitting it with its 6 metal spikes ranging out of its back shoulder blades, and somehow the strikes emit no kind of sound, as if the cube absorbed the energy, including vibrations, in totality. The tall giant stands upright, and from its midsection downwards, it is made out of broken up rubble and stone dust that spin up from the ground into it. From the hip down, it widens out like a funnel, hoovering up the debris strewn around. The cube is positioned on a tall structure and is held in place by claws that emit an extraordinary black light and are connected to its 8 corners. The light-emitting cube is only the size of a laptop, but it effortlessly withstands the sharp puncture attempt of the much larger stone creature without as much as a scratch. The sand arm informs him that the cube holds power useful to Yun. Shame this creature took an interest in it. Yun comes through the archway and moves up the wall, still in stealth mode, to get a better view of what is ahead of him. What do you think? Are the sand abilities going to work with this thing? The sand arm replies that this foe is within Yun's element. In other words, this situation is better than fighting water. The creature is still hammering away at the glowing white and blue cube. This gets Yun thinking. He asks the sand arm some questions and devises a strategy. A blast of sand shoots out from the wall near the archway and flies straight ahead in the air. It lowers and lands on a rock, and Yun merges with it. Quite a long distance was covered. It would have taken some time longer to get to this point in stealth mode alone. Sand shoots out from that rock up into the air, aiming for elevation, covering a good distance before landing on another rock where Yun merges, getting closer to the creature. He does this a few more times until he is close enough to study this giant. The sand arm informs Yun that the stone giant seems to have no sensors around it. It should be simple enough to come close and launch a stealth surprise attack. Concentration builds up and Yun focuses. He makes a path in his mind and the sand dome tests the theory of the path ahead for him and gives the okay. He sends out a sand line that easily slips beneath all the debris and quickly makes its way up a stone column that is still standing. Yun is astonished how far away from himself this sand line can actually travel compared to traveling through the air. The line continues up until it reaches a fair height and gains a vantage point. It extends a line outward in the direction of the stone giant. As it pushes on outward, its tip spreads wide open, and the sand lance appears in full. Then Yun's face and shoulders in the form of sand. Despite his actual location being in that rock on the ground where he started, he is able to create and send a version of his lance and face to the other end of that sand line, from where he observantly takes in every detail his large target has to offer. Yun listens intently. He's looking to catch the vibrations from the creature, trying to hone in on its frequency. The 3 spinning lances on its back particularly seem to resonate with him. He senses it. He feels the many vibrations coming from this 12-story tall stone giant and focuses to find its main energy source. The sand dome includes that this technique is a useful tool in identifying the power sources and apparent weaknesses in simple creatures, but higher caliber opponents are much more in control of what they emit. Some could stand right in front of Yun and signal nothing more than a simple rockwood, but with one action could punch a hole miles deep into the ocean, the size of a small village. Got it. I see someone moving and they emit energy like a dead rock. Run. Nice, thinks Yun, hoping to never meet such a creature. Yun notices something interesting. The 3 lances on the giant's back are more than half the length of its height and open inward out like a cone as they spin. Also, it is not using all of its spikes to attack the cube. It seems there are 2 spikes on each shoulder that are folded, similar to a concertina ladder. The giant has 10 spikes in total. It has 2 shoulders, but no arms. There's nothing in their place. Yun notices that the stone dust and debris on the ground indeed do swirl up and into its hip, where they seemingly are absorbed. At closer inspection, Yun notices faint, glowing lines in the swirl that appear and disappear from time to time in some kind of bluish hue. The outer layer of sand on the fake Yun falls back and reveals the boy in the flesh, hanging out from his shoulders connected to a tiny sand line no thicker than the width of an old TV remote control. There he remains, still like an assassin of the night, in vanguard jump. Lightning fast, Yun slits through the air and lands a complete strike at the giant's back neck. Failed. Before Yun is even halfway landed on the stony ground, having smoothly avoided the spinning lances, the creature's hole in the neck recovers completely. He failed his assassination. It remains an attempt. And now comes woe. The spinning lances instantly rotate at frightening speeds. A light at the giant's back appears within the circumference of the lances. It emerges as a perfectly round grey stone. It shatters. Yun could not even say a thing, and he is already engulfed by a thick rock dust storm that aggressively passes him by, flinging the boy into the air like he weighed nothing. The storm contained within this old ruin sends him higher and higher up. Yun's view around himself is near totally gone. His legs dangle up and down, pulling him, pushing him, rotating Yun around his own axis like an ice skater, spinning him round like a stone at the end of a string. It is madness. He hits a wall he did not even get the tiniest chance of seeing. The sand arm just managed to cover him, but the pain is real. The sand arm warns that he finds himself in a life-threatening situation. He needs to think fast.
Staying out in the open will end me. I need to.
This time, he senses it coming. A boulder appears out of nowhere, twisting at face-ripping speeds. Yun shoots a propelling blast of sand out from the sand arm, forcing a straight stream. He hears a massive whoa sound pass him. He just missed it. Just. But therein is the answer out of this madness. There is nothing in Yun's knowledge or power range that could hope to match what this creature is outputting right now. It is like a soldier running towards a live grenade in order to redirect, but it already has gone off. It is too late, and the damage, even if not a total hit, is done. He is thrown against a stone column and veers off into the center of the storm. The sounds of rocks crushing into each other overwhelm his hearing. He cannot think straight. It is too loud. He needs a way out. The air ahead of him suddenly parts just a little, and Yun sees the ground moving dangerously quick towards him. Yun stretches his right arm out and covers himself in sand and disappears into the ground like a javelin cast into deep water. Yun is hurt. The blood flowing through his body pulsates painfully into his left fingertips and tongue. His heart might as well be in his mouth at this point. The boy is in the momentary safety of the sand arm's stealth mode, deep on the ground. He can faintly hear the rage of the storm above the surface. It sounds like the storm has picked up in speed. Certainly, it was the last moment to exit. His sand jet might not have worked against the storm's current strength.
What a mess. What a mess. Man, why did my strike against its neck not work? If that worked, I wouldn't be in this beaten up shape right now. I feel wrecked. I need to sense where its energy source comes from. I thought back when I fought the statue in the square room that I could see those energy strings. No?
The sand arm silently confirms that indeed he did not imagine that moment, but it was just a future taste of what was to come in response to his energy spike. Back then, the energy surge gave him a quick look at what ability he could have in the future. That is all. It continues that if he was to obtain a new power source and added it to himself, he could attain this ability to more accurately pinpoint energy sources and weaknesses in opponents in that way, at least those of a lesser ranking caliber to start with. The strings could reveal the true power source of an opponent. As Yun just experienced, a lesser ranking caliber does not mean weak. At this moment, as Yun floats in the sand's protective shell, he sees a light shining to his side. He turns his head and finds a source of brightness, the cube. The sand arm informs Yun that this cube is such a power source. He should travel to it. The way to unlock it will become obvious to him. Despite his pains, he moves towards the light. It is slow going, but he persists on, not losing sight of his target. The sand arm informs him that he needs to move in a curve, a C shape, as otherwise he would be too close to the giant and get discovered by its spiraling lower body of rubble and stone dust that connected to the ground. Yun does just so until the sand arm gives him the all clear. As he finally makes it under the cube, he begins to hear whispers in no language he understands, but he feels as if he is being invited in some strange way. From deep under, he moves a thicker sand line up and past the surface to test how strong the storm is. He adds thickness to the sand line and keeps going up the radiant black structure that holds the cube in its grip until it touches the cube itself. Instantly, Yun sees things in his mind's eye. He feels and sees vibrations dancing in front of him. They appear as continuous waves, but each are created from a center, similar to the waves created by throwing a small stone into still water. He moves his head around and observes how his sand arm seems to be connected to all the vibrations in some way. His sand arm itself is vibrating, and indeed, he knows what to do. He tilts his right arm straight ahead and applies focus to his palm. A ball of sand emerges. Yun feels a vibration coming from it and closes his eyes to focus on the vibrations. He sees and feels the vibrations clearer now. There is no indication which one you should start with first, so he just picks one and begins. With the vibrating sand ball floating in his hand, Yun tries to match the frequencies from the ball to the vibrations of his target. He listens carefully and tries to get closer to the way it sounds. It is a match. He moves on to the second random vibration around him and finds that frequency was not far off from the first and matches it too. He is able to go on and match 4 more, but struggles with the next one. It seems to contain 2 frequencies and a rhythm that moves between them back and forth like a ping pong ball. He spends many attempts until he guesses the 2 frequencies right. Now he needs to follow the dance of the rhythm and match the timing. He got it, and it is the last one, as all the other vibrations he has not yet tried fade away. The radiant black structure holding the cube fades out of existence, and the cube itself glows brighter and sends several new frequencies into Yun's sand line, and thus into him, who still is in stealth mode below ground. Yun can hear and sense the mad roar of the storm released by the tall stone giant continuing to rage on. The connection in Yun's mind remains strong, and the floating vibrations begin to move together in a slow, rhythmic way, then faster and faster as they glow brighter and complete each sequence. Yun feels a vibration catching a hold of the sand ball in his right palm, and a strange pulse goes through him. It feels immeasurably expansive, as if a space underwater got instantly pushed away, replaced by a vast volume of oxygen. The vibrations around him carry their dance higher and higher up in the air. The sand ball in his hand now vibrates in so many frequencies that Yun's palm feels completely fixed to it. Another dense pulse spreads through him, making the deeply expansive sensation from earlier feel like a spoon dropped in the ocean. Yun's legs feel weak and he is getting dizzy. The boy can just faintly feel the connection to his body, which still is being protected underneath the ground in the sand arm's stealth mode, while the storm above rages even louder. As the connection to his body weakens, the frequencies in his mind begin to surge, becoming vivid, clearer, more real to his mind's eye. The floating vibrations make a sound that forces Yun to look up sharply. A circle, a gigantic circle which could fit an European soccer pitch, has opened up far above him. He sees darkness and the stars in it. The 12-year-old feels himself floating, despite him being in the space of his own mind. The sounds around him shun away and get quieter. His concerns begin to ebb from him, carried away further with them. The area outside the circle around Yun changes, and in its stead forms into a wall of bright white mist. Thunder. Yun's view turns white.